Well, I trust everyone's doing well. My name is Jeff Fuller, pastor at Living Hope Wesleyan Church. Hopeforvermont.org is where you can certainly find more information. As we agree that we are simply beggars sharing bread with other beggars, so let us do that as part of God's family and know that you are not alone. I just wanted to share that we are also on Google Podcasts. I'm pretty excited. Our assistant pastor, Kenny White, has us up there. It's Living Hope Wesleyan, Living Hope Wesleyan, so you can certainly find us on there, as well as on YouTube. The YouTube channel simply is Living Hope Wesleyan Church. But I believe people's stories make our stories much better, less ignorant, and certainly better. And so right now we have a great story for you. This is Pastor Cathy Bruce. Cathy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for making the time. I heard you on, I believe, a webinar, something like that, with the Wesleyan denomination, just sharing your story. And first of all, I just want to start right there, I guess I should say. The Wesleyans, small denomination, I think we're right around 1 million members strong worldwide. But becoming Wesleyan has been new for you and your church, Hope Nomad. Could you just share about that process and what it has been like for you to be a part of the Wesleyan denomination?
Sure. Yes. So we are very new. Our church just got voted in, I believe, 2 Saturdays ago. So we are excited to be affiliated and joining the denomination.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So we have there's there's a number of Wesleyan churches actually in New York City. Most are in the outer boroughs. So we are just the second of two Wesleyan churches right in Manhattan. And so Jen and Brandon Peterson, who run Resurrection Life, are good friends of mine. I've known them for several years now. Our kids went to the same school, and so I guess that was probably my first introduction was through Jen, and just seeing how much they really have a wonderful synergy around women clergy. And that was obviously very attractive to me, as I'm a woman and a pastor. And so this past January, I actually was down at Exponential in Orlando and met a bunch of other female church planters from the Wesleyan denomination, and was just kind of really excited to see how much they are equipping and resourcing and just really passionately behind female church planters. And as someone who God put that call in my life last year, I was more than thrilled to become related with them and affiliated with them. So.
And I really enjoyed Dr. Carl Eastlack. I think his leadership is tremendous, and I certainly love him as a man as well. Certainly gives incredible direction, and I feel as though he's there for us, especially during COVID-19 in the middle of a pandemic in New York City. How have you guys survived personally, but then also with ministry during this time? I have a friend who's in New York City, and he really couldn't leave his apartment building for a long time, and that sense of isolation was very difficult. How have you guys been?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely was a challenge. I will say that ironically, God had provided my husband and I with a small little weekend house outside of the city a year ago, and never in our wildest dreams did we imagine we would be hunkering down. We actually brought a bunch of our launch team. We were sort of mid launch of our church. We had planned to launch in May. And we took a bunch of these folks who were on our team, artists, some had lost their jobs, and we actually retreated. We had already been up here when things started going crazy in the city. We were up here for spring break, and we just invited, we knew we could house more people up here who needed to quarantine. And so there were 7 of us living in this house for what we thought would just be a few weeks. You know, we thought, oh, we'll just hunker down and go back in, and it ended up being about 4 months. And so we all got back to the city this summer. Because we could not start live services, we really felt like God was encouraging us and prompting us to keep going and start online. So that's what we did. We started online services on Pentecost Sunday, May 31st. And it's not been anything like we had planned. it's been better, I would say, in the Lord's wonderful way. He has sustained us and enabled us to plant a church online, and we're so excited because we just did last weekend our very first community outreach. New York is getting better. The city is getting better. Things are starting to reopen. We have kept the COVID rate down. We have to obviously maintain safety and be careful how we're gathering and when, and all the sorts of specifics about that. But we are actually even looking at, we're going to trial a live service with our team next Sunday in our building, and we're really excited about that. We're on East 31st Street. So we're going to see how that goes. We're monitoring, spikes, if there's any, spikes, because school started back up, and I know there could be another surge. So we're monitoring. And what I think the main thing we've learned is just to be flexible. I'm thankful we have a team, a really passionate team of artists who are very creative and very flexible. And so we've just pivoted as much as we've needed to.
Yeah, let me pull up your Facebook page right here. And there's a picture of receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And we spoke off air just about the importance of the arts for you guys specifically. I wish, I think that we had a arts pastor. I know that adds to worship in several different dynamics. Can you just talk, did you grow up with this, I shouldn't say bent, but for this affinity for the arts, or is this something that you've had to learn to embrace and just to have other people fill in those voids?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my former career, I actually was an artist. I was an actor and singer. And actually, I ended up in New York City in 1996 because I got cast in a Broadway show. So I, was an actor and singer and dancer for a number of years before I became a full-time pastor. And so it's very much a part of who I am, the communities that I've run in. My husband and I helped plant a church after 9/11 in the city that really attracted a lot of artists. So I led one of their very first creative artists small groups. And I've always had, a kindred spirit with other fellow artists. My brother's a visual artist, so kind of runs in the family. And I believe God's created us, as we mentioned earlier. You and I were talking before we started that, we are all created by a creator, right? We are all artistic in nature, whether we know it or not. And being able to express that. And I think also a passion of mine is being able to express different artistic mediums within the church. I think that's something that we need to keep being intentional about. Otherwise, our artists who, that's who they are, sometimes don't feel they have a place there, specifically either in a worship service or in a community. So we're very passionate about making spaces for artists.
That's so important that we do and intentionally do that as well when it doesn't come as naturally. Hope Nomad, that's your Instagram handle. Where did that name come from?
Yes. So if you know anything about Manhattan, we're full of little neighborhoods. And I don't know when they started doing this, but a while ago, they started kind of putting together little kitschy names. And so our neighborhood is actually the Nomad neighborhood of New York City. It stands for North of Madison Square Park. And so that is our neighborhood, north of Madison Square Park, hence Hope Nomad. We're in the Nomad neighborhood, and it's a great little pocket, fairly unchurched pocket, which is one of the reasons why we were excited to get in there and plant a church in there. We're kind of on the fringe of three different neighborhoods. So we've got Nomad, Kips Bay, and Murray Hill all sort of convene and converge where our ministry building is.
Well, Cathy, Catherine, Pastor Bruce, whatever you want to be known as, can we back up a little bit? How did you grow up as far as a family structure? Did you have parents that kind of pushed you into Christianity, some might say, or was that something you discovered and felt just Jesus calling you? How did that all culminate?
Yeah, so I grew up in a church-going home. We moved around quite a bit when I was younger. So, but I don't ever remember a time where our family didn't go to church. We were actually in several Methodist churches, which I love the fact that, as the Wesleyan denomination, there's this connection with the Methodist, and I certainly can say that I grew up in Methodist churches, and but I did not really come to understand who God was and have a relationship with Jesus until I was in high school. So that was predominantly through Young Life, which is a high school organization. If you know that organization, very near and dear to my heart. My son's involved in it now. He's 15, and great just organization, based on sort of this model of relational evangelism. And that's something I think our church models well also, is this idea of, building a relationship and trust before we start, pushing the gospel on people, as we have to love people as Jesus did in all different kinds of ways. So, but yeah, predominantly through Young Life is how I became a follower of Jesus.
So, Cathy, my mom will probably watch this and tell me I should have chosen a better word, which might be indeed the case. However, how do you respond when people give you grief for being a vocational woman in ministry?
Wow. I don't know that anyone has overtly.
That's good. That's good.
There hasn't been anything overt. However, my husband and I did move to the South for about 10 years. And so we have been back in the city for 3. We were in the city for 10, moved away, raised our son in the South. I would say non-overt fashions. I definitely felt a sense of oppression, for lack of a better word, as a female leader. I identify with an 8 on the Enneagram, if you know anything about the Enneagram.
Yeah. I'm a 3.
So. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I very much felt like a fish out of water, trying to be a female leader in certain church spaces. And I was a worship leader for a very long time, a number of decades now, and actually a worship pastor, which is how I ended up in the Hope family of churches in New York City. And so I would say a lot of prayer and a lot of self-awareness. And I think, I certainly, as a woman, I can say that I've experienced hurt by because I'm a woman, and being told, well, you can't do this, but you can do this, and you can't do that, and not a lot of it was super biblically based. And it wasn't until I went to seminary that I started realizing, wow, some of this is a little skewed theology here. So I think once I sort of understood who God was calling me to be, and recognizing that I could embrace that, that's when I really started stepping out in my leadership fully. So I don't know. I haven't had anyone really overtly, I guess, give me crap.
Sorry, Mom. Hey, so do you think I would feel that New York City is a perfect place for you with all of the diversity? Has it been an adjustment, or do you just love that city feel?
So I fell in love with New York City probably in high school. I had a dear friend who was like a big brother to me, who used to let me come visit, and he would take me to Broadway shows and just encouraged me in my acting career. And I fell in love with the city then because of the arts. But I would say it was in the late 90s and 2000 when I actually took my first full-time role on a church staff, that I realized how much of a beautiful mission field it is, of people who have, many have never heard the gospel. They've never bumped into a Christian who's going to love them unconditionally and not throw a bunch of legalistic rules at them. Like I love the people of New York City. So I would say I love what New York, I think when I was younger, I would say I loved what New York had to offer. But now as a minister there, I love the fact that I get to, as a pastor, just love on people I mean, our church went out last Saturday and gave out masks and hand sanitizers to 500 people and had conversations and just got to know people in our neighborhood and got to talk with them about their struggles and just be the hands and feet of Jesus. Like that was the best. It was the best day I had last week, was getting to do that. So I would say, loving God, loving people. Those are my two things, my heart. And so I love that I get to do that in a city that I love.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think we could look at Jesus' example, and he did the same. So if we're to be like Jesus, that's some important qualities. I just want to ask you too, because I know that when I speak to younger Christians or just students, just younger age-wise, want to do, and then after I will pursue Jesus. What are your thoughts as far as your background with acting, Broadway, all of the arts that you've been a part of? Do you feel like you've had to give up those things you've loved and now it's time to focus on Jesus, or have they been able to be blended together?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think as a Christian in the arts, I was definitely in the minority, early on in my 20s when I moved there. And it was hard, right? Because the culture of urban cities can be so swaying and so alluring, right? Like the pursuit of success. Many people move to New York City to become successful, to earn a lot of money. But the Bible says those things are so temporal, right? And so even if you have those things, and I think, what I learned getting my dream job in my 20s, right? So like getting to perform on Broadway was my dream job at a very early age. What I realized was you never get satiated by that, right? Like that's you're always going to want more. So then it's like, okay, well, you landed on Broadway, but now what's the next big role you're going to try and go after? And so it's temporal. It's not satisfying. The things of the world are not truly satisfying. And I think, as I have conversations with people, especially now in COVID, now that everything has been stripped away, right? We are left with ourselves and God, if we believe in something bigger than us. And so right now, I think people need Jesus more than ever right now. I think as they are dealing with loneliness and the fact that they've had everything that they thought was important in many cases has been completely stripped out of their life. And so we're now getting back to this sort of ground zero, if you will, of, wow, we're with our families stuck in apartments. And, how do we deal with conflict? And how do we better our relationships? We can't do that without God. So I think, I think we're in a really unique time in history right now, especially in the urban cities where really we only have Jesus left.
Right. What are your thoughts, Cathy Bruce, pastor at nomad.org, hopenomad.org, making some time joining us. What are your thoughts on the use of social media or technology during this time? Because I've certainly found it a benefit, but there are those that would still say online church, virtual church, it is not the real thing as meeting with people, which I can understand that to a point. But I really believe it's more both and instead of either or. Mm. So first of all, I guess, what are some of the fears you have for pastors, churches that just put all their eggs in one basket regarding technology? And what other thoughts do you have regarding that issue?
I think we are going to move into a new season where it necessitates having both. I'll be honest. I have not liked online church. It is not, I'm an extrovert. I love to go have coffee with people and talk with them about how their life is going. And it's been difficult. And as soon as I could get back in and start, as soon as the outdoor restaurants were going, I was like, okay, I'm meeting you at a coffee shop, or come on over and we'll, find a place on the sidewalk to hang out, like safely with masks and distancing and all that. But there's just something I feel like is lost, personally, when we're divided by the screen. At the same time, it has opened up the gospel in an incredible way, because people from the comfort of their own home can hear about Jesus, participate in a worship service, do a small group. We use the emotionally healthy discipleship curriculum for our small groups during the week, and they've been booming. Like, we've had people that, yes, good old plug for Pete and Jerry there. But we've had tremendous response online. I know this summer we did a joint alpha course with Hope Midtown, and it was tremendous. We had a ton of people jump on there, people with questions, about life and their purpose now and how to deal with pain and suffering. And so I think we need both. I think we're going into a season where it's not going to be good to put all your eggs in one basket. But I'll be honest, I'm excited for the day to get back in person as well.
Now, what would you also advise for parents of children that have been trying to disciple their kids at home, which, well, we were supposed to be doing all along, but sometimes we left it for the children's director, children's pastor, youth ministry team? How important is it that parents learn that this is their responsibility, but instead of shaking a finger as pastors, we just really come alongside them to help them with these aspects?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a parent, so I can't even imagine. I have a teenager now, so I can't even imagine like trying to do COVID when my son was 3 or 5 or even 7. So I'm in awe of how parents have been handling what I think is just an incredibly challenging season of trying to work from home, help their kids school from home, help disciple their kids from home. I see the church as a really important part. It takes a village, right? We already know this. It takes a village to raise children. And so I think as the church, we have a really important responsibility to try and come alongside as best we're able to. Our own children's director at Hope Nomad has started, actually, we used to have a post-service kids group. Now she's shifted to during the week, spending individual time in smaller groups with kids to give parents a break and to be able to help teach the kids. But yeah, it takes a village. It absolutely does. And I think it's not, I think the parents are probably learning right now, maybe in bigger ways, being forced to be home with their children, that we have the most important job to disciple our own children. But also I see this as an opportunity for the church to get creative and come alongside the parents to help with that. We've all got to work together.
Another question, and hitting on this, because I did see it on your website too, The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Pete Scazzero. It's amazing. I really enjoy it. And I just think, or I've heard different reports, read reports, probably you have as well, about how this isolation is affecting people emotionally, whether it's mental illness or disappointment, discouragement, depression. The church, I believe God would have us be there for families in these times where there is that mental aspect as well. What have you seen God do in your own life, in your family, or in your congregation that we could really learn from and apply for some of these situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally have struggled with depression over the last few years, and this has been a season where the tools from the emotionally healthy discipleship courses have been tremendously valuable. And so I've been encouraging my congregants, people I know from actually all over the country. I've had friends from Facebook who jump into our emotionally healthy spirituality courses, emotionally healthy relationship courses. We just did an emotionally healthy women's course where we had 25 women online walking through these things together. And I think the most important thing is taking the time to be with God, because when we're with God, we're also with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And we have to build an awareness, an ability to become self-aware, especially of our emotions during this time. I think what I learned early on through March and April is I had to sit and go, God, what is going on? Am I supposed to still plant this church? This is crazy, right? And I had to get real with myself and go, I am losing all the plans and hopes and visions that I had for how we were going to plant this church, I'm now losing all that because God's taking over and God's going to unfold it the way he's going to unfold it. And I've got two choices. I can either get on board with that, but address the loss of my preference of how I would have liked things to go, or not. And so I chose to follow God. But I think acknowledging the loss is really important. And we're all dealing with tremendous loss right now. Not, loss of jobs, loss of family and friends, people who have died from COVID, right? We're dealing with so much grief and loss. And I think it's easy to just kind of want to brush past that and not deal with it. And that's not healthy. Right. It's going to hold us back.
No, I certainly agree with that. And those are wise words. I know for me, I love listening to different podcasts. There's several books that I will listen to. And now I would just listen to it as I was driving and wouldn't pay attention. So some books I will listen to as I look at the hard copy and highlight, underline. Found some great resources. What are some resources that help you besides the Bible and besides your personal devotions that really help you in leadership, but help you stay aligned with who God created you to become?
So the book that I've been clutching in this season is a book on Sabbath by Wayne Mueller. And I have been digesting it very slowly. I'll take a chapter a week and just sort of meditate on it, pray through it. But this idea of, I remember when March and April when COVID hit, I felt like I was working 100 hours a week. I was like trying to, pivot and keep up with all the Zoom calls and, all the stuff, right? All the stuff that we're doing right now. And I realized by probably the end of April that this was not sustainable. And though I had a regular Sabbath, daily Sabbath a week rhythm, this book on Sabbath that Wayne Mueller wrote is so phenomenally just encouraging and having you look at Sabbath in a different way. And for instance, the chapter I was just looking at last week was about how we are a Sabbath to others. When we empty out ourselves, we're able to be more present with people. And as a pastor right now, I have to be able to do that. I have to be able to obviously make sure that I'm achieving my own Sabbath rest, but I have to be able to empty myself so that I can be Sabbath for someone else, so that I can listen incarnationally, that I can encourage and just spur on, but that I can really be present with somebody else. And so that book, I would say, has had a huge impact on me in this season.
Why do you think pastors in particular do not take or have Sabbath?
Well, I worked for a church that did not take Sabbath for a while in the past. And what I noticed about that situation was there was this sort of connecting with, I've got to stay on the rat race. I got to keep working hard in order to grow the church, right? So there was this huge emphasis on growing the church. Now, obviously, if you grow the church, there's nothing wrong with growing the church, right? You're able to present the gospel to more people, right? It's not an inherently bad thing. But if you're growing the church to the detriment of the depth that you're growing with Jesus, and that the people that are coming, it's to the detriment of growing deep with Jesus, then it's a problem, right? And so you're also, so again, I think there's this kind of false equation of the harder I work, right? And we see that in society. I ran a business actually for 10 years. And I remember burning out around year 7 because I thought I got to keep working. I got to keep hustling. I got to get more clients. And the more I did that, then the more successful the business would be. Right. And that's a problem. Yeah, right. Yeah. I'd rather, so as a pastor now, I learned from my bad practices of working too hard and not resting. And the Lord has created rest for our benefit. and for our health.
Yeah, I'd suggest that too often we people are chasing after their own identity, where if we would take time to rest, we would find our identity as who God created us to be, and we would be open to that instead of just chasing our own dreams or whatever success we think it is. Cathy, thank you so much for making the time. A couple questions, then we'll get you out. Hopefully these are more fun, lighthearted. But I just want to know if you're at liberty to share, what was the Broadway production that you were a part of?
I was in Les Miserables.
Oh, look at that. Fancy pants. No, good. So another question, if you were cast in a fictional movie, would you want to play the hero or the villain?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would probably say some of my most favorite stage roles when I was an actor were kind of the villain. I always got cast as the ingenue, and my most fun that I had creating. So I would say probably the villain.
See, that's what I would say. So, if it's a fictional movie, right? I think as a pastor, I'm like, you know what? I think it might be fun to play the villain.
Well, yeah, and there is evil, right? There's evil and goodness.
Yes,
so
the best answer I heard was somebody said they wanted to play Captain Jack Sparrow, or they want to be like that hero villain, or whatever the case might be. So how are you doing with your son's homeschooling? Is this something that, is he back to school multiple days, or is it where you're balancing Zoom, computer, internet with raising kids, doing church, and trying to live life?
Yeah, so he's in a hybrid situation right now, so it's not too bad. I would say the biggest challenge we're having is the homework.
Yeah.
But that's not anything new. My son is very, very talented and a bright kid. And he, his mind is sometimes off in other places. And so sometimes we miss some of those homework things, but it's something we're working on. And we thankfully got the internet so that we all can effectively, we're very thankful to have the internet. We can all Zoom when we need to.
Yeah. Well, technology is great. I probably should save this for off air, but I get so, I don't know, nervous. My headphones went out, so that I could only hear you through the screen that I'm seeing you on. But then I realized the headphones were kind of helping me with my bad hair day. And my friends are going to make fun of me for having a little man bun. But you know what? I'm 45. If I want to have a man bun, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful thing about being in your 40s. You just don't care. Sure. You just don't care anymore. That's
the truth. Cathy, last question I have for you. How can we, whether it's clergy, Christians, the Wesley denomination, be praying for you, your family, and the Hope Nomad Church?
Yes, we would covet your prayers. I would say just that our church would be a blessing in our neighborhood. That is our biggest prayer right now, that we would just be able to reach out and continue to be creative, and that God would continue to bring people into our congregation as we grow, that want to go deep with Jesus. And that we would just be a blessing to New York City. That's our biggest prayer.
Cathy, thank you so much for making the time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
And again, that's Cathy Bruce, pastor at hopenomad.org, hopenomad.org. Make sure you go and check that out. My name is Jeff Fuller. I'm the pastor at Living Hope Wesleyan Church. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Living Hope Wesleyan, and now on Google Podcasts, Living Hope Wesleyan. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. And let us remember that we are simply beggars, sharing bread with other beggars, attempting and being God's hands and feet, as we just love one another. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.